Welcome to Storytime Shorts, a new short series where I talk about some silly stories that have happened throughout my life that I want to share. For my first installment, the story of how I accidentally got free McDonald's. This past summer, I had a morning where I was craving McDonald's breakfast, so I made an online order and picked it up in store. Yet, for some reason, a glitch happened in the app and they never made my order. Despite that, I still got the online receipt for my order. When I arrived at the restaurant, I showed the workers my receipt and the worker said, "Our mistake," and they made my order and I ate it in the restaurant. Hours later, I got an email from McDonald's saying, "We noticed you never picked up your order, so we are going to refund it," even though I had already eaten the meal by this point. So basically I never actually paid for the food. And that's the story of how I accidentally got free McDonald's. If you like this type of content, subscribe for more. See you in the next one. Welcome to Storytime Shorts. On this installment, my high school senior prom story. Here's how my senior prom went. I didn't go to my high school senior prom. Anyway, that's all to the story. If you like this type of content, subscribe for more. Animal sightings on school grounds can always be interesting experiences. But when I was in elementary school, we had one that stood out from the rest of them. The skunk sighting. When I was in elementary school, there was one day where it was found that there was a skunk nearby to our school, and probably to fight off some nearby predators as they do, the skunk spewed its foul odor to get the predator distracted or something like that. I don't know. I'm not much of a wildlife expert. Nevertheless, it kinda stunk up the entire school, and because of it, oh wow, it was an unpleasant experience. And that's what makes it so memorable. So, that's the story of the most interesting, to say the least, animal encounter that has ever happened at my school's grounds. If you like this style of Storytime Shorts, subscribe for more. Happy 2025, everyone! I hope you all had a great end to 2024 and a great start to 2025, because I surely didn't have a good end to 2024. Why? The neurovirus. If you don't know, the neurovirus, also known as the Norwalk virus, and sometimes referred to as the winter vomiting disease, is the most common cause of gastroenteritis. Infection is characterized by non-bloody diarrhea, vomiting, and stomach pain. Fever or headaches may also occur. This was how I spent my 2024 New Year's Eve. Of those 5 symptoms, I got the first 3 real bad, and there was basically nothing I could do other than play the waiting game. Imagine just a New Year's Eve of lying on the floor and throwing up over and over in 2-hour intervals, and that was basically New Year's Eve for me. I was also going to watch Sonic 3 that day, but because of this whole conundrum, my mom canceled the plans. So that was a sucky way for 2024 to end for me, but it is what it is. Just hoping that 2025 is a little nicer. I have had some interesting substitute teachers during my schooling years, but there was one that stood out to me for some reason. This was a substitute teacher I had in middle school, the accordion playing substitute teacher. I had this substitute teacher several times for either general music or string orchestra classes. I legit don't remember anything else about this substitute, but at the end of each class where I had him, he would bring out his over a century-old accordion, and he would play some tunes for us, whether it be the Mario theme or something else. I think those were the first times I heard an accordion in person. Anyway, that's the simple story of the most interesting substitute teacher I've ever had in my schooling years. I have never been one to want to remember much of the things I did in elementary school, but one day while drifting through my memories, I had one that seemed to stand out looking back. I never really knew how much as a second grader I was kinda sadistic. Let me explain. When I started second grade, I got introduced to the traffic light system that the United States implements in their schools. At my elementary school, we had green, yellow, orange, and red. Green meant you were a good student, yellow meant you got a few reminders due to not following order, orange means you've been misbehaving a little too much, red meant you had to fill out a check form for your bad behavior and or got a phone call home. For me, getting yellow was like the end of the world, and I don't think my teacher ever put me on it. Only power-tripping substitute teachers ever did that to me. Anyway, so I had to switch classrooms for math that year, and it just became tradition that every time I came back, I got to see who had their clip moved down, and I would just be thinking, "Looks who's been naughty today!" But I wouldn't say anything out loud. I was a good behaved angel, can't you see the halo above my head? But yeah, looking back on it, it did seem kind of sadistic, getting me to think that way. On today's installment of Elementary School Memories, I have no reason to remember so fondly my first second grade field trip. In early second grade, we were learning about soil and erosion in the ground, and after each class went over it, we had a grade-wide field trip to some soil facility or something like that. And it rained the previous day, if I recalled. And honestly, I don't blame a lot of my classmates for not wanting to get their shoes all dirty, since it seems to have a common knowledge for some of the kids to put on waterproof rain boots or something similar to that, which many did. However, Because of how our class periods were set up and the day of the week it was, we had our so-called specials in the afternoon after we'd already gotten back, and my class just happened to have PE that day, and a bunch of students forgot about that, and with how the rules of the gymnasium were put into play, unless you were wearing tennis shoes, you couldn't do anything for class other than just sit up against the wall and watch everyone else. Actually, I do have a faint memory of an exception that happened to one girl. I remember 11 kids all had to sit against the wall and not be able to participate that day. You know, I can't blame those kids. All they wanted was just not get their tennis shoes all dirty. Why do I even remember this? Last March, I ended up on crutches for the first time in my life, and it was not fun. I didn't even break anything. I just had a weird glitch in my calf muscle that caused it to swell up real bad. I think it was caused by slight pressure that was bestowed onto it from doing a heavy load of laundry. It hurt real bad. I called my university health center and limped to the car and got dropped off. When they took me in, they found it was exactly how I just explained it, and they gave me the crutches and some pills until the pain subsided. I had to still go to my orchestra class with the crutches, and since the teacher didn't show up, I literally just got there, grabbed my instrument, got in my car, and drove back with an old friend helping me get it back into the apartment. I still went to my 2 club meetings of the evening, but again, I had to drive to both of those places, or someone else had to drive me there. Took the pills as needed, and I was better by the next day. It wasn't a huge or overclimactic story, but that's basically how my experience with crutches went. As I entered adulthood, I have learned that dealing with finances is very annoying sometimes. Do you know what makes it worse? Having a bank with a complete lack of security for people's cards. This happened to me this past fall. When I was flying back to university after fall break, I drove out of the parking garage and I was suddenly finding myself unable to pay by card due to my card not working. Frustrated, I tried over and over. No dice. Because of this, I kept shooing the people behind me, telling them I was having issues and they should go to another gate in order to get out of the parking garage. I ended up having to go into the special assistance line and my mom had to help me pay over the phone, just so I wouldn't be stranded in the parking garage for God knows how long. Eventually got out after 30 minutes at the gate. It was horrible. Come to find out, my debit card I was using to pay for everything got frauded right before I left and I didn't realize in time, and my bank was over 500 miles away from where I was. What ended up happening afterwards is that my bank had to send me a new debit card, my parents also got me a new emergency card so that this shit wouldn't happen again. It just meant I couldn't pay for anything except for with gift cards for the next week and a half. But I survived. As a Gen Zer who grew up playing a lot of Nintendo games, it makes sense to be growing up with stuff like Super Smash Bros. My first Super Smash Bros. Game was Brawl, and I loved playing Brawl, even if it had its flaws. But also, my parents were the types who were very selective about what games we would play, which isn't a bad thing. In fact, it was a useful thing. So as a result of that, there was always one character according to my parents that my siblings and I were prohibited from ever playing in Brawl. That was, of course, Snake. I think the reason why was because there was one time when my brother was playing as Snake, or maybe a match with a CPU that was playing as Snake, and my dad walked into the room, because I think it was my dad, while Snake was using his Final Smash, and I think that he thought that he was using a gun, even though he's actually using a grenade launcher. And when that happened, from that point onward, we were not allowed to play as him, or even had a match with him. So that was the story of the one time my siblings and I were not allowed to play a specific character in Super Smash Bros. Brawl for a while. I used to believe some interesting things when I was younger, but I feel like I can't blame myself for believing this one thing from elementary school. When I was in elementary school, the aftercare program I was in had a very old dictionary. You could tell it was an old dictionary because Ronald Reagan was still the president when they published the dictionary. At the end of this dictionary, it listed all the presidents of the United States, and at the bottom were asterisks that meant stuff. If you had 1 asterisk, it means they died in office. 2 asterisks mean they were assassinated. 3 asterisks mean that they resigned. This was the first time I'd heard the term died in office before, and I, probably like a lot of people, took that literally and thought it meant that the president actually died inside of their office. So just imagine filling out some paperwork in your office and then suddenly you get a heart attack in the middle of it. Actually, I did some research and some of the presidents did actually die in the White House, but none of them were by heart attacks. It didn't take me long to realize that is not what died in office meant, but I still think about it as a relatively silly concept from time to time. Bees. One of the most important insects in our ecosystem for survival of living creatures, known for their yellow and black stripes and buzzing sounds. But you know what isn't fun? Getting stung by one. That happened to me in 3rd grade. On the ear. It was horrible. Agonizing. I assume what happened was the bee nearby mistook my earwax as honey or something like that and kept flying towards it. As the 3rd grader I was, I kept trying to swat it away, but it kept coming back, and after a bit of this, it decided it had enough and came back and stung me right on the ear. The dead bee got stuck in my ear for a little while before we got it out, but I started my day at the nurse's office and had to deal with grown-ass adults saying I was going to become the next Vincent van Gogh for the next few weeks. And that's how I learned not to move when a bee flies by me. Never gotten a bad sting since, so let this be an important lesson to learn. 2020 was without a shadow of a doubt an atrocious year, but you don't need me to tell you that since you already knew that. I remember when my birthday happened in 2020. It was on Friday the 13th. And not just any Friday the 13th, but the day before everything shut down where I was. Well, last weekday at least. I remember that I didn't even know what pasta to eat, so I just asked my mom to go to the grocery store and then I could decide from there. And then we got there, and in the spirit of lockdown and panic buying, there was almost nothing there. So I just decided, screw it, let's just go to Noodles & Company, so I don't have to be so indecisive. So that's what we did. And that's basically the uneventful story of how my 2020 birthday was screwed over by a little bit of empty grocery store shelves due to panic buyers. Not the finest incident, that's for sure. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone! I have never had much of a tradition for St. Patrick's Day since I usually spend so much time beforehand preparing for my own birthday 4 days before, and although I have some Irish heritage on my mother's side, I don't carry out too many Irish traditions. But there's a simple tradition I always make sure to follow on St. Patrick's Day. Always wear green, or I might get pinched. When I was younger, that's the main thing we did for St. Patrick's Day, and I think in my elementary school days, I would be the one to pinch people who were not wearing green on St. Patrick's Day. I don't do it to strangers anymore, or that many people for that matter, but I guess sometimes if my family is around, I might do it. I might tease them with such statements. It's a small tradition, but surely was a sneaky one. No pinching me this time. Oh, wait a minute. My OC doesn't wear green. Uh-oh. I once got my entire ring finger stuck in a table when I was in elementary school. I think I was just kind of being a curious kid. Sometimes I like putting my fingers in holes and stuff, and when I was examining a folding table I was sitting at, I stuck my ring finger into it since the sizes matched and suddenly found that I couldn't get it out. What a paradigm. I pushed and pulled and tried what I could. No dice. When the staff realized what happened, by sheer luck they just so happened to have some Vaseline to cover my finger in until we eventually got it out, which took a very long time. It took so long, in fact, that my mother came to pick me up and take me home, and she was greeted with whatever this was. After a bit of finessing, we finally got the finger out of the table, but it was the most swollen I'd ever seen that finger, and that's how I learned not to stick my fingers in random holes in tables, because I didn't want that to happen ever again. I oftentimes am the type of person to read some people's responses or watch videos of the stupidest things their teachers have ever said or done to them. You know the ones. They hated drawing anime, the targeters of specific students, that kind of thing. I was pretty lucky I didn't get anyone that was that horrible, but there was this one time when I was in first grade that takes the cake for one of the worst things any of my teachers have ever said, and it was all because of the fact that I just misunderstood the weather that day. It was forecasted to rain that day, and when it was time for recess, we were told to line up for it, but I remembered the rain forecast. Thinking it was still raining, I didn't believe what my teacher was saying, so 6-year-old me asked her if she was lying, if she was just trying to pull my leg. When she heard that, she was really offended for some reason, and she accused me of calling her a liar, and she wrote a note in my agenda book, which, for the record, I didn't say that, and she had me stay in. Since I was only 6 years old at the time, and obviously had no power to stand my ground, she got away with it. That just always stuck with me. But once I got older, it was so apparently obvious. She probably only took this job for the power trip over the children, as a lot of elementary school teachers, who really shouldn't, tend to do. So I got this new anime plot. Basically, this high school girl, except she's got huge boobs, and I mean some serious honkas, a real set of badankas, packing some Doban hunkros, massive to honka bankaloos, big ol' tananra cougas. Now what happens next? A transfer student shows up even bigger bahanaka hoogs, humongous hunga. So, pro tip for ordering food online, always make sure you change to the right location when ordering your food. For my birthday this year, I completely mucked that part up. I was ordering myself a sandwich from Potbelly and was using the free cookie or shake redeem, and right when I pressed the submit button, I realized I accidentally ordered a Potbelly 4 states away! Panicking, I called them immediately and asked for a refund, and they did that. But you know, it takes time for those refunds to go through. So it just meant I couldn't get it on my birthday, and I had to wait a few days later, and I got my birthday lunch somewhere else. Specifically, Noodles & Company. Luckily, the park goes on for a whole month, so let this be a reminder if nothing else. Don't be like me. Always make sure to set the right location when you order online. This has been a message from yours truly. When I was in elementary school, on the last day of school, it was always a tradition that the teachers would put on the annual Teacher Talent Show Assembly, or whatever, for all of the students to watch, and it was quite a thrill when it came along. But there was one year where we had one specific act that, almost 15 years later, remains as one of the most bizarre things I have ever seen in my life. It was a segment called The Pillowheads, and it was just 3 teachers wore oversized pillowcases with faces over them, and they danced to Soulja Boy. Of all songs, Soulja Boy! I just want you to visualize that for one single moment, and imagine the insanity. Anyway, so after the song ended, we had to guess who the 3 teachers were. Never has a school talent show left me so confused. I once got to go to the White House for Easter. Well, sort of. Apparently, the White House has this thing they call the Easter egg roll or something like that, and for some reason, despite being during spring break, this was a field trip I was required to go on. I was only in 1st grade at the time, so I basically remember nothing about it other than the fact that it happened. We didn't meet any presidents in person much. Maybe we saw them once or twice, I don't know. I was 7 at the time. I would have likely repressed all my memories except for the fact that last year, in 2024 of all years, I was cleaning my room and suddenly found that I never threw away my ticket for it, and the slight memories came back to me. I learned that you could never know what memories might come back to you when you least expect it. Also, Easter was yesterday as of when I'm releasing this, so yeah. Talent shows! Never been the biggest fan of them. I did have one, well, almost 2 times, I did participate in some in elementary school. The reason I say one was because there was one I was going to participate in, but I bailed out when my uncle came to pick me up, so I didn't actually participate in that one. The one I did participate in, on the other hand, I actually went twice. The first was with my 4th grade best friends, and we took a dictionary. This was actually the same dictionary from the Died in Office story, and poked fun of the ways the letter V was drawn in the dictionary. Mostly because we thought one of them looks like a snail. So we just got up on the stage and sang V-Y-U-V-Y snail. And then we sat down. The second time I went, I fucking kid you not, I just got on the stage and sang Don't Mine at Night. Yes, that Don't Mine at Night. I even did the crouching thing at the bridge and some kindergartner laughed at me, so I just kind of walked off the stage and attempted to strangle him. I didn't actually strangle him, but I was faking it. I then continued on with the song. So yes, now I'm going to let the whole world know about the time I sang Don't Mine at Night at a talent show. You're welcome, everyone. You're welcome. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone. I really like tacos, but I'm also very particular in how I like my tacos since I like my food like tacos and burgers, with not a lot of stuff in them, and for it to be very simple. Unfortunately, when it comes to catering, sometimes I don't get that luxury. So one day, I went to this event near my college campus, and we were checking out a nearby national park, and for the catering, we had it from a nearby taco place. Now, I'm not going to mention the name of this taco place, but almost every piece of catering from this place had some food that I didn't like in it. But I had to bite the bullet and take whatever taco I could. So I decided on this taco called the Blue Dream that had a lot of ranch flavored stuff in it, and I ate it at this one bus stop nearby. I was gagging several times while eating this taco, and I didn't have a drink because they didn't cater any drinks, and almost every water fountain nearby in this national park was broken. Not a good thing when this is happening in August of all months. But at least I ate the taco without throwing up, or so I thought, because the very next morning I woke up at midnight throwing up all over the floor. Couldn't eat a taco properly for at least 5 months after that. It was horrible. Hi there, I'm SupernovaBlade, and do you have a problem with dealing with an automatic toilet that just won't flush properly no matter what you do? Well, I have a solution for you. I can speak from personal experience that all you have to do is scream out "fuck the police" at the toilet and it will flush properly. I can confirm this works. I did it about a month and a half ago. It doesn't matter the speed at which you say it, all you have to do is holler out "fuck the police" and it should work. Guaranteed. Okay, actually this is satire, this doesn't actually have a guaranteed chance of working. I will admit, I'm one of the strangest people you will probably ever know when it comes to coming up with music to play in the background for things. But damn it, I love a little bit of chaos sprinkled in, so as long as I'm not harming anyone, I feel like I am free to let my imagination run wild and I will listen to whatever appeals to me. In moments like these, I can make some silly jokes. Similar to last week's Storytime short about the automatic toilet, I was inspired by something that happened in a John Mulaney's skit that influenced what I decided to listen to. So I was doing this assignment for a morality course, and when deciding what song to listen to, I put on a playlist that I called Salt and Pepper, and it has 7 What's New Pussycats, followed by 1 It's Not Unusual. And then the rest of the playlist was just more What's New Pussycats that I just listened to until the assignment was done. And then I turned it in and got 100%. So let it be known that listening to the Salt and Pepper Diner story gets you a perfect score on an assignment. You can take my advice. I have always been the type of person to, whenever I'm thinking about my day, I try to remember things I did on that specific day in previous years. Does anyone else do that, or am I the only one? As of when I'm releasing this video, it is May 26, 2025, meaning it has been exactly 1 year since I went to MomoCon, which I did an entire Stories in History video about, even if it was a rather rushed video. The link is down in the bottom of the short. But nevertheless, this is just a habit I've had for so long, and I'm not sure if there's a connection between that and some other neural patterns, but whatever. If you are like this as well, you can share if you feel comfortable. I never really understood why the hell people say that a bird pooping on you is good luck. It's not. It's gross. I can speak from experience since I once fell victim to a seagull who took its shit right on my shirt. It's not a super extraordinary story or anything, but I can set the stage. So imagine I was with my family and we had some trash to throw away. My mother had asked my brother and I to do the deed of disposing of the trash, and then one seagull probably decided, oh look, 2 kids, perfect thing to shit on, and got us both. Needless to say, we had to leave the boardwalk right afterwards and change our clothes. There was nothing about this giving the impression of good luck, so I don't understand why people even still say this to this day. Instead, it was just a morning ruined by a party pooper. Except there was no party. It was just a pooper. When I was young, I was very particular about what types of food I ate and what color said foods were. So if a food wasn't the color I usually liked the food being, or it was not a natural color I associated with said food, I would not eat it. I was especially this particular with cheese, since I used to only eat yellow cheese and not white cheese. That was just an example. Now let me explain another thing. My household was very much a kid cuisine household, and I loved the frozen macaroni and cheese, and I remember at one point they had a movie tie-in with Shrek Forever After, and to promote it, Kid Cuisine would dye some of the macaroni and cheese green, even though it would still have the same taste. Because I thought, wait a minute, macaroni and cheese is usually more orange or yellow color, not green, and I refused to eat the Shrek macaroni and cheese because of the green coloring. But of course, now that I'm an adult, I have learned stuff about some food dyes and packaged foods marketed to kids having some ingredients that may cause cancer, behavioral problems for children, and DNA damage. So I guess 7-year-old me was actually onto something all along. Do you know what's something that has always caught my eye for some strange reason? Lottery television screens at restaurants and pubs. From a young age, I have always been fascinated with things with numbers and repetition, and I guess this stemmed to staring at these screens for extended periods of time. I will even admit, I didn't even know these were for the lottery until I got older. Found out my grandfather's the same way. He likes staring at those screens too. It was a rather normal thing for whenever we would go out to a pub or something with those screens, for me to just get a seat facing one of the screens and just watch it for minutes upon end. I can't be the only person who likes those kinds of things, am I? I, as of now, have only done the lottery once, but I may do it in the future responsibly once I'm in a better financial situation. I will say this, as of when I'm releasing this video, it will be June 23rd, 2025, which is the date after the Love Live Sunshine Aqua finale Love Live IQ stage. I understand I'm making this video ahead of time at the beginning of May, but I'm just gonna say it, I need some time to cope and process this whole thing. Driving is a risky business from the way I see it, since you need to be very alert in what is happening around you, and it's better if you're not a jerk about it. When it comes to the weird circumstances I've been in when it comes to driving, there was a story from this past February that sticks out to me the most. Let me set the stage here. It was a rainy February and I was going to get myself some mac and cheese from a nearby place and make some tasty mac and cheese. And I was driving along the road as usual, when all of a sudden I was around these people who had this dog waiting. The light was green and I continued to drive, but out of nowhere, the dog, who I thought was on a leash, started walking in the street unprompted while the other people were trying to call it back, and the dog was not on a leash. It just starts strolling across the road in front of me, causing me to have to slam on my brakes as it crossed to the other side of the street and the other people in front of it. I guess they were not the owners after all, but it just meant this dog was backing up traffic and I was the first car who had to stop for it. And that's the story of how I had to deal with a jaywalking dog on a rainy day in a dreary February. I, like many people, don't like going to the dentist. But why? It's actually pretty simple. Because I have a really bad gag reflex and it makes life harder for me and my dentist because I don't like inedible things in my mouth. But I'm trying what I can to make things better, and I do feel like I am improving. I understand the benefits of going to the dentist and getting your checkups, even if I fell out of doing so around lockdown. And I always try to make sure to follow the advice and change my routine if necessary. It's just the bad gag reflex makes things so much more awkward. I am someone who would probably consider themselves kind of an airhead, and sometimes I have said some things about thinking about them, and it would backfire on me. But there was one where I look back on it and just say I can't blame myself for saying such a thing, because I thought it was rather innocent until I learned when I got older what it could have been interpreted as. Let me explain. When I was in 4th grade, I really liked watching this Minecraft channel called Crafted Movie. And they were a channel that made some silly Minecraft content with silly titles sometimes. They were rather prominent during the early days of Minecraft's official release. So I would talk about their most recent video with my teacher. Their video, Never Waste Your Diamonds on a Hoe. Because I knew, why would you mine for diamonds just to craft a diamond hoe? So when I mentioned the title in front of my teacher, she was shocked and said, "You really shouldn't say that." And I didn't know what the hell she was talking about, since I only knew it as, don't craft diamond hoes in Minecraft, craft other tools instead. And it wouldn't be until much later I would learn, oh, hoes mean stuff other than farming tools, and I just didn't know that yet. I consider myself someone who makes a lot of good decisions, but I have to say, one of the best decisions I've ever made in the past 12 months was my decision to delete my Twitter account. I liked around Blue Sky when it was during its heyday, but I couldn't get in because I didn't get an invite code until September of 2023. I archived it when the Grok stuff was entering the scene, as well as some other stuff that dipshit was doing. I rarely had anyone to respond to my Twitter nonsense, and most of them were likely just either close friends or bots. Case in point, when I first saw the trailer of Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I was shocked and said on Twitter in response to Elephant Mario, "What is going on here? Is this Super Mario on shrooms?" And at least 6 different bot accounts offered me places where I could purchase marijuana shrooms. And then the Grok stuff started to not allow you to opt out, and I heard if you opt out before the new update reverted your decision. And that to me was the final straw, and I deleted my account this past November. Now I fully use Blue Sky, which isn't perfect, but at least it isn't run by a clueless and corrupt dumbass who seems to fizzle anything he touches. I consider myself someone who doesn't get scared very easily, but every so often I have this very weird fear that I know is rather irrational, yet if it were to happen, it would be terrifying. Basically, I have this weird fear where I would look at a TV late at night or something, and then suddenly a movie or a TV logo with music that comes completely out of nowhere will appear on the nearby TV, or heck, even just the wall of the room I'm in, and it'll startle the ever-living daylights out of me. This fear usually happens with logos with black backgrounds. One major example is this Walt Disney Home Video logo shown on the screen with gold text on a black background. Just imagine looking at a TV screen that is turned off, and then without turning it on, this just randomly shows up at full volume. You'd likely be terrified too. I know it's irrational of a fear, but I sometimes can't help myself but feel fearful. I want to say something. I'm not someone who personally follows any specific diets or anything like that, but I'm not someone who has a problem with people who do, as long as they're not being jerks about it. But there was this one conversation that happened between my mother and her work friend that every time I think about it is something I find really amusing about diet misconceptions. Let me explain. Earlier this year, my mother was cooking some flatbreads and she had asked what I wanted on my flatbread, and I said I wanted zucchini but no bacon, which I mentioned in the most recent Stories in History video that I do not like bacon. And my mother was talking about it with her friend and mentioned about me wanting the zucchini flatbread, and the friend said, "Oh, so Supernova plant-based now?" And my mother had to assure her, no, Supernova is not taking on a plant-based diet, or at least not now. I just wanted veggies on my flatbread and no meat. Simple as. About a year and a half ago, I went to a conference in Chicago, Illinois, and at this conference, me and some college mates I was with went to this live tracing event in the downtown Chicago Public Art Materials, and there, we traced some live models in our notepads and went crazy buying new art materials. Although I didn't buy much art materials other than what was given to me, I would later use a bunch of those sketches I made at that event to start a new series called Metabang Paint Time-Lapse Shorts, since I took those drawings and digitized them later. Those sketches were actually used for the first 3 MetaBang Paint time-lapse shorts, which the first of which I released a week after the end of the conference. If you want to check them out, I will include them in the description. I have a problem. Or I had a problem before I found a solution to it. I have a problem where I own way too many short sleeve shirts and I need at least 3 overflowing drawers just to fit them all. Let me explain how this happened. See, every year I go to an annual church picnic, and there they have a donation sale of apparel of various kinds, and one of the discounts they offered is a full basket of clothes for $5. And for 3 or 4 straight years, I would make it my mission to fill the basket with as many shirts as possible so that I would not run out for a good long while. And I think it would take me over 6 months to wear every single short sleeve shirt without washing any of them or wearing any of them twice. It wasn't until 2025 I stopped and used it to buy other pieces of apparel. No wonder my dresser drawers are always overflowing and I keep having to find new alternatives of storing them. I don't play gacha games. Why? I have money to spend on macaroni and cheese. That's literally the excuse I make every time someone asks me about playing gacha games. Why would I spend my money on gacha games when I could be spending that same money on macaroni and cheese? I know where I want my money to go, and I have my priorities straight. So that's why I don't play gacha games. In this day and age, it just feels like I just get too many spam calls. So it's kind of hard for me to accept calls when I think they're all spam and they're all trying to get my data, that kind of thing. But sometimes, when I'm having a little too much fun, I like to completely mock a lot of these spam calls. Because a lot of times they're just like, "Hello, my name is Scam Likely, and do you want a chance to win $1 million? Except that's not usually how spam calls work. Instead, they just say something relatively normal and hope you fall for it. I've lost too many debit cards doing that, but now I know better. But it's just fun sometimes to mock how bad these scams can be. I am not usually someone who thinks that a lot of mobile ads I find are super memorable, but there was this one that always terrified me years ago. I have no idea how I remember this still to this day, since this was an ad from over a decade ago, but it was for this game called Hearts of Vegas. It was a slot game with this pink or purple cat, and in the advertisement, which would appear on my old Amazon Fire tablet, which I do not have anymore, it would have a bunch of slot machines in the background, and the cat would just stare into your soul. The whole time, with huge eyes and unchanging smile. It didn't help that I often got this ad whenever I took my tablet out of sleep mode, and that's the first thing I would see. It got to a point where I would have to put my hand over where the cat appears in the ad so I wouldn't be caught off guard and startled. It also didn't help that at one point they changed the ad so the slot machines disappeared and the cat would slightly shift to the right of the screen, so I'd move my hand to shifting to the right. And later they went back to the old ad design. Needless to say, I did not enjoy this ad at all. I have seen some awful mobile game ads in my days, but there was one that I remember years ago that stands out as the most obnoxious and most aggravating mobile ad I have ever had the displeasure of seeing and hearing. Let me set the stage here. In this ad, which I think was one of those life simulation games, there was this little girl and both an adult male and an adult female, and also a judge, and they were all inside of this courtroom. The audio was the sound of a little girl crying, and it was the most ear-piercing, horribly sounding crying sound that I have ever heard, and there are 2 buttons, and you have to pick one. One says mother, and the other says father. I knew exactly what this was trying to say. It wanted us to decide which parent the girl goes to since the parents were getting a divorce. And it still stands as completely unpleasant. Sometimes even the most hurtful things stick with you the most, even when it's just a mobile ad. Happy 8 years of Doki Doki Literature Club. People who know me well would know that ever since that one streamer guy I follow and moderate for played the game on stream, I would not shut the hell up about the game. Back in late 2021 and early 2022, that was almost all I would talk about, retweet about, make my account about on Twitter. But even with that aside, I'd still say it is one of my favorite video games. I love the characters, the story, the direction, the art style. It is all wonderful. The community, that may be a different story, but I usually don't focus on that. Nevertheless, cheers to 8 years, DDLC. Thank you for creating so many memories for me and thousands to millions of others. Every so often, I end up in a lot of those, I'm not sure how the hell I found myself in this situations. One that stands out to me was back in September 2020 when I made a silly misheard lyrics video of Sukoji's Numa Numa cover. And then by February of 2022, he disappeared, and so did most of his content. Little would I know it would lead to an exodus of people going to that silly video just to listen to the song. As a result of it, so many people in the comment section have been asking me whatever happened to him, which doesn't annoy me really. In fact, I find it rather amusing. I'm not going to complain about such a situation. Instead, I'm just going to say, I thank you. I actually talk about this in one of my stories and history videos as well, specifically the history of my YouTube channel video. If you want to check it out, the link to the video is down below. If I had a nickel for every time I went to use a restroom at a restaurant, and they would accidentally take my food away while I was in the bathroom when I wasn't finished, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. The first time it happened was late last year when I went to a fast food chili restaurant and got myself a Cincinnati 3-way with cheese fries. But it was also right around the time I had a slight virus in me, and it hit me really hard in the middle of me eating the cheese fries. And I raced to the bathroom to let it out, per se. And when I came back, my table was empty and cleared. Confused, I told them where it went, and they assumed I was done and had paid and left. So when that happened, they were surprised, and what they did was made me a new plate of cheese fries, since I'd eaten the chili already. So I basically got extra cheese fries out of it. So I guess it kinda worked out. But this isn't the end of the story. Tune in next week for part 2. If I had a nickel for every time I went to use a restroom at a restaurant and they would accidentally take my food away while I was in the bathroom and I wasn't finished, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. Second time it happened was at the end of September when I went to treat myself to some dinner out. I ordered an appetizer, mozzarella sticks, an entree, chicken parmesan, and a dessert, chocolate cake. Or so that was the plan. I ate the appetizer and then most of the entree before suddenly having to use the bathroom. When I came back a few minutes later, my table was empty, so I asked, where did my food go? And then the servers found out what happened. They all got really apologetic and all felt bad about what had just happened. I told them it was all fine. As a result, they gave me another appetizer, cheesy garlic bread, and I ate that to make up for it. They also gave me the dessert without any additional charge because they felt so bad. The server who originally did this mentioned his brain went on autopilot and he swooped it without realizing I was still in the restaurant. I talked with him about some stuff like my art, my current job, which I plan to make a stories and history video about, and so forth. I got my dessert to go, but the entree and appetizers left me so full that my stomach couldn't take it, and the garlic bread came out the other end in the parking lot. But I wasn't sick. So that was an interesting dinner to say the least. Do you know how to easily be a mess maker? I can tell you how. Eat a Cinnabon with your bare hands. One day at the mall, for some reason, I decided I didn't want to use the fork I was given, and for some reason decided to eat the Cinnabon with my bare hands. It was so tasty, yet so messy. At least half my hands were covered in cinnamon and frosting. But damn, was it worth it! This is making me hungry just speaking. My stomach is screaming now. I used to be scared of my basement, and for the stupidest reason too. I don't know why, but I have a very vague memory from when I was really young, and I was sitting in my family's home TV room, and for some strange reason some guy was over, and he had to move some stuff in the room. One was of a figure of Daffy Duck inside of a treasure chest, and the other had a bear inside of a basket. For some odd reason, when he moved them, I ran from the room scared. After that, I was not able to walk into the room or even look at the room without feeling scared. It wasn't even because of the soul-staring picture in the room, or a bug in it, or anything that my dad thought was the reason. No, it was because of this. Couldn't check out the first Wii we had because of this fear. But after about a year or two, I finally was able to go back down and not feel scared of the room anymore. That's just the thing about being a young kid. Sometimes you just get scared of the weirdest things for the weirdest reasons. And I'm no exception. I've always had this weird habit when it comes to the time. Since daylight savings time is over as of when I'm recording this and releasing this, I actually have 2 different clocks in my car. One for when it's daylight savings time and one for when it's not daylight savings time. So I technically have both the clocks on 2 separate hours. So technically one of them's on the right hour. It also means one's on the wrong hour. Does anyone else do this? Is this a convenient thing for people to do, or does it just make everything confusing? For me, I think it makes things kind of convenient, but I can see why it could be confusing for others. I only run one YouTube channel, but believe it or not, I used to run several others before I deleted them. Other than my main YouTube channel, SupernovaBlade, I used to run two before called Miserable Herobrine and Storage 54, and one that never saw the light of day called Artifact Jeb. The thing about these channels is that with the exception of the first one, the other channels were just for content on other devices, i.e. one was for content on an old laptop that was passed down from my grandma, and I tried playing Minecraft on it, keyword tried. The other was all selfie videos where I tried reenacting bad intros from Mr. B's Old Worst Intros series, all done on an old iPod Touch. The other channel was part Minecraft single-player nonsense, part TF2 videos, part channel where I used to upload random Mario Kart 8 highlights. But other than my main channel, they've all been deleted. So that's how I tried to be all two-faced with YouTube channels in the past. I bet before I tell you, you would never guess which website was the first website where I got my original username I would use for my channel. I bet you can't. Do you think you could guess it? Well, here it is. TheHub.com, the website of the TV channel that used to have Transformers Prime, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and Pound Puppies, among other things. I used it in order to make an account and maybe get some high scores on My Little Pony Spot the Differences or something like that. It was a while ago, so my memory is a bit fuzzy. I go more in depth about this in my first Stories in History video. Link is down below. Did you know that the username I use currently was done because of a song from my favorite band? Well, now you do! Specifically, my favorite band, Within Temptation, released their album Resist in early 2019, and my current username is named after the fourth track of the album, Supernova. Plus, I wanted to keep some essence of the old username I had before, being Sharpblade MC. So what I did was remove the MC so that I wasn't all associated with just Minecraft, and keep the Blade part. Because I still thought that swords were cool, and voila! Also, space is pretty fucking cool as well. Have you seen a supernova? I actually go more in depth about this in the first Stories in History video. Link is down below. Sometimes in life, we do some awkward things and get weird impressions because of things not being laid out properly. This happened to me the other day. Let me explain. At my job, I was outside and really needed to use the bathroom, so I was walking over to a nearby place where there was an available bathroom, which just so happened to be this nearby pizza shop, so I went to the bathroom to use it. When I came out, the people worked there looked at me with concerned looks and one said, "Hey, that bathroom is for employees only." And instead of feeling bad, I just told them, "Oh, sorry, perhaps next time, so this won't happen again, put a sign there saying it's for employees only. I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else." So afterwards I left, but it was still an awkward situation nonetheless. And also a part of me was kind of tempted to just write a sign saying employees only, just give it to them so that they could just tape it to the wall. Sometimes I feel like people just suck sometimes, have no filter or care for others when they make mistakes. I also know that I am an imperfect driver at times, and parking isn't my specialty. So on that topic, last year I was in a rush to get back to my university apartment for some reason, and I parked my car not the best. Fast forward days later, when I went to get myself some lunch, and when I arrived at the restaurant, I noticed a little note on my windshield that I didn't notice before. Once I parked the car, I grabbed the note, which was written on a tissue, which I figured was just a piece of trash that flew onto the windshield, but this was not the case. When I left my car, I saw the note and it said, "You are ass at parking." I stared at the note, walked into the restaurant bathroom, and used the note to wipe my ass and flush it down the toilet. So let this be a lesson. You call me ass at parking, my ass is where your note is going to go. We all do stupid things. All of us. And they say that in college you do your stupidest things. So let me share mine. When I was a junior in college, I was watching this strange woman on the internet, who some people might know who I'm talking about. And during one of her streams, she made a joke about eating 7 corn dogs back to back. I know the whole thing was a joke, but my brain decided, try it. So fast forward about a month and a half later, I was in my university cafeteria and they were serving corn dogs, and I got myself, what else but 7 corn dogs to eat back to back. I also got myself some mandarin oranges to wash it down. I kept trying to eat these corn dogs. I was getting more and more uncomfortable with each passing corn dog because I had never eaten a corn dog before. Eventually, one of my friends noticed me and went to talk to me and act like moral support while I tried to down these corn dogs. Eventually, I gave up at 6 corn dogs before walking away, taking a raspberry scone with me to eat for later and giving my blueberry cake to the friend so that he could eat it. Then, as I was walking back to my apartment, I threw up on the side of the road and lied down on the grass for a few minutes. And that's the stupidest thing I ever did in college. My family still teases me about it to this day. So moral of the story, don't try eating 7 corn dogs back to back. Or do. Your choice. Ever since I was young, I have always been quite a jokester, and every time we decorated for Christmas, there was this thing I would do year after year that would always annoy the heck out of my mom. Let me explain. When I was younger, I used to own this Fisher-Price nativity set with little connective parts for some of the pieces, and one of the pieces was putting the angel on the roof of the manger. Except all the pieces had this connecting piece at the bottom, so hypothetically, you could put any of the pieces on the roof of the manger. So what I would do is constantly put the pieces in the wrong spots, and my favorite was always putting baby Jesus on the roof. Every time. Every year without fail I would do this. My mom didn't want baby Jesus to be on the roof of the manger. Put the camel on the roof. Put the donkey on the roof. Make 2 of the 3 wise men be the parents of a cow. The combinations are endless. I'd love to do this year after year, but I'm not sure if we have that set anymore. But anyway, it was fun while it lasted. I'm going to be honest here. Do you know what's something I see people do around the holiday season that always amuses me? The people who put reindeer antlers and a big red nose on their cars. I know why they do this, so their car can look like Rudolph. It's not a thing I would do personally, but every time I see someone do it, I am thoroughly entertained. Before we had cars, we rode on reindeer, except not really, but let me have my fun. Maybe I should try doing that one of these years. I don't know. It'd be funny. Apparently doing research, you could buy it on Amazon. Money well spent, then.